There are many examples of human mark making. These cave paintings from Lascaux in France are ancient examples of how humans communicated. Before even the invention of writing, we were able to make our mark, leave our trace, leave something behind, and communicate with others. Recently, witch marks were found at Creswell Crags in the UK. These marks scratched into the rock are thought to be there to ward off evil. These marks are thought to have been made about 250 years ago and are some of the earliest examples of witch marks in the UK. If you look at them carefully, of course you can see letters, but other shapes too. What drove the inhabitants of the area around Creswell to make these strange repetitive marks? To leave their trace, to scratch something in, or to leave something behind. There are many artists who use mark making as a key element of their work, and in fact all artists use mark making within their work. For some artists, mark making is the reason that they make their work. During this project, we'll have the opportunity to develop mark making skills, to make exciting sculptures based around writing and lettering, to take that outside into the environment and learn to paint and draw using our sculpture to help us. I'm sure that everybody will be able to find something interesting that pushes them forward in this project. We're starting off with simple mark making tasks to get us warmed up. We're going to look at the repeated marks from the witch marks in Creswell and produce some mark making drawings and prints just to get us going. Let's have a little look at some artists before we start so that we've got some context for our work. Our first artist is called Cy Twombly. Cy Twombly was a very famous American abstract expressionist painter. You can see the shape and size of the marks behind his head. His mark making was huge. He used writing and language in his work and developed his own poetic use of scribbly, scratchy marks that made him one of the most famous abstract expressionist painters. His work took in many different elements, such as myth, landscape, text, thought, and legend. So that artist is Cy Twombly. Look at the variation of heavy and light, scribbly and soft, filled in and left blank. Our next artist is a contemporary artist who I find very interesting called Inez Snydell. Here, Inez's work, Stop Brooding, uses inky marks, loose drawings and text to create these beautiful, fragile little egg people. You can see how many different kinds of marks are within the eggs. Little scratchy hands, scribbly writing, clipping ink, spreading out ink marks, cross-hatching, filling in spaces with perhaps her finger or her paintbrush. All sorts of different mark-making techniques are used here. Inez Snydell is a very interesting artist and we'll be using her more in this project. Our next artist is Jean-Michel Basquiat. This painting sold for £45 million. Basquiat was a street rat whose work focused on graffiti, layering, scratching, mark making, writing. He had his own language that he used within his work, but as you got to know it, you learned to decode and translate what he meant to say. Basquiat, the rebel of the art scene, was a great friend of Andy Warhol's. His sense of colour and pattern has been extremely influential on many areas outside of the arts, such as skate culture and fashion. Let's start off by using a wax candle and working from the Creswell Crag witch marks images which you've been given. I want you to very loosely make marks based on the images in front of you with your wax candle. Of course you won't be able to see it because after all we want to loosen up with our mark making. We'll do more tight drawing later on. Once you've got your marks onto your paper, please use black drawing ink and water. First of all, you'll need to place the water over the page where you've made your marks with your wax candle. You can then drip your ink in and see what happens. Next, I'd like you to make a viewfinder and choose a section of your mark making which you're going to develop into a larger scale painted work. Move your viewfinder around until you've found an interesting section you're learning how to crop. Use your phone or your camera to take some images of it which you can print off and put in your sketchbook. Now you're going to be very brave like Cy Twombly and work on a much bigger scale to recreate the image that you've made using your cropping. Again, I want you to use the wax candle. I don't want you to copy too slavishly at this stage. This is about experimenting and learning how to develop a mark into a larger, more interesting form. I'm using my wax candle to make the mark on the paper. I'm going to cover the page with ink and see what happens. I've done 2 of my mark makings here so that I can see what repetition will give me. Finally, we're going to flip the idea. So instead of working with the wax candle, creating a resist of the pattern that we've made with our mark making, we're going to paint the pattern we've made with our mark making into our sketchbook using black ink. Now there's no point trying to copy it too slavishly, but do carefully observe the shapes and forms of the pattern. Once you've roughed it out with a paler ink, so using more water, I'd like you to work over the top with the stronger ink, so perhaps a bit more black. Of course you could try another colour too, but do limit your colour palette. We don't want too many colours here at the moment. Think about allowing the ink to run out on your brush to give you a more scratchy mark. You could experiment with several brushes. If you struggle to work from your image, you could always turn your image upside down to help you. It would be really good to try this standing up on a much larger piece of paper. If you can, please do that. Let's see what happens now if we fill in some of the white space. Let's try using some press print. You'll need to scratch your marks and patterns into your press print, which is like a polystyrene board. Try using all sorts of different things, such as your fingers, back of a pen, a fork, your fingernail, the wrong end of a pair of scissors, anything you want. Once you've done that, roller a very small 5p piece amount of ink onto your print plate. I've made 3 in different scales and I suggest you do the same. Remember, we're working from the witch marks from Creswell. Now let's see how they look when we ink them up and print them. Let's try overlapping them and see what's happening. It's much better if you can use a clean roller to roller the back of your plate, but I only had one roller at home. It's interesting to see how some of the marks are more appealing than others, such as the scribbly mark in the top right hand corner. Let's try repeating some of our plates. Repetition will often give you an interesting effect. Don't be afraid to get more ink on those print plates if you want to. Don't just do one page, do more. Keep experimenting until you have something interesting. Now you've done all that, I want you to open your eyes, look around you, get yourself outside, socially distanced of course. Go and seek out as many different repetitive marks in the environment around you that you can find. Look everywhere, you're hunting for them. Photograph them, print the photographs off and put them in your sketchbook. Well done.